Hi guys, got another little Dishonored craft video for you. I think I'm out of drink ideas for now. I'm sorry, but I am not crazy enough to try the rat liquor. I'll be making my best attempt at a rune. As you know, these arcane artifacts, carved of whalebone and inscribed with the mark of the outsider, can be collected by the player to acquire and upgrade magical powers. People have made and sold plastic 3D printed versions, but I prefer real materials, even if they're not exactly accurate. So this one will be made all of metal and bone. About 6 years ago I made a simpler version, but it was pretty basic and the mark was just drawn on with marker. It's fallen apart a bit since, so I hope this one will be an improvement. To start with, we need bone.
Bone.
As I mentioned once before, trade in whalebone other than antique scrimshaw is generally not legal, so I'm using a big piece of camel shoulder bone. You can get these on eBay for around $15–20. They have a broad, flat section that works well for this purpose. The first step is to cut out the piece that will be used. For this I used a coping saw, also called a jeweler's saw. I also used a jigsaw for the thicker sections. After this rough shaping, I used a grinder to get it more into the final shape. Now I have to point out that bone dust, especially from power tools, creates the most vile stench you can imagine. It's truly heinous, possibly the worst thing I've ever smelled.
This better be worth it.
So if you do this, wear a mask, do it in a well-ventilated place, and wear clothes you can throw into the wash right away. Anyone that tells you bone dust is cozy, well, I disagree. Another unfortunate fact is that the type of bone with this kind of shape is not going to be completely solid. It's very porous inside, with material that will eventually fall out and rot. So I pressed clay into the pores where it was exposed and sealed it by oven baking. The next step is to sketch out the rune's concentric circles, lines, and of course the mark. As you can see, my freehand drawn mark was pretty bad, but it was just a placeholder. I carved the circles using a Dremel tool. Then I printed out the mark on paper and cut it out using an X-Acto knife to make a kind of stencil. This looked much better. With this outline drawn, I again used the Dremel to scribe out the mark so that it was actually cut into the surface of the bone. I couldn't get it that deep.
That's what she said.
But it's there. I also added some of the arcane symbols around the periphery of the rune, which are mostly zodiac signs. Most of them are hard to make out from pictures, so I only put a few. At this point I also sanded the surface with 220 grit sandpaper to smooth it down. This is important because over time the bone will start to flake off otherwise. I found this out the hard way with my last attempt. I then filled in the mark using permanent marker. This was when I made my first mistake. I sprayed polyurethane coating to try and seal the bone against flaking and degradation, and of course this smeared the ink all over. Duh. I cleaned it up as best I could and redid the marking. I think it looks fine and adds some bit of artificial aging. Man, don't you just hate ads right in the middle of your video? Anyway, my latest book, The Artificer's Knot, is out now. This gaslamp action fantasy follows the adventures of a disgraced young inventor forced to rebuild his career by working for a notorious gang boss, until more sinister powers emerge offering wealth and redemption, if only he'll betray the very man who saved him. The ebook is free on most or all of these platforms, depending on your location. Please read my book, I'm so lonely. Next is the brackets. I used some 2mm thick aluminum strips. I love aluminum, it's easy to cut, and I used it for my mana potion project. The hacksaw made short work of it, then grinding and sanding to smooth it over. After cutting the sections, I drilled holes for the bolts. My second mistake was trying to epoxy the sections together. I really should have just used single pieces and then bent them to shape, because every piece broke apart multiple times. I don't know if I used the epoxy wrong or what, but it was very frustrating. For the loops at the end of the brackets, I used this piece of brass rod I had left over from another project. They look pretty rough, but eventually they'll be covered with gray metallic paint. Next, I drilled holes through the points on the rune where I thought the brackets should be bolted down. Pleasantly surprised, the bone didn't break apart at this step. The next part was the scariest step, the broken section of the rune. I was very afraid it would snap to pieces and I'd lose everything. But again I was surprised. The coping saw cut through it along the exact path I wanted, and it came apart almost too smoothly. To connect it to the larger piece, I chose these screws. After drilling some pilot holes, they actually screwed in very easily. Remember how porous the interior of the bone is. I cut off the ends with the hacksaw and did the same on the other side. Once again, I pressed clay into the exposed inner bone and baked it shut. Almost done. Next was to attach the brackets. Again, very frustrating because they kept breaking apart, and I kept gluing them back together. I used bolts cut to length and nuts on the back side to secure them, all painted metallic gray. Final step is the leather strap. It's an easily missed detail, but one bracket always has a strap, and it's always the one on the broken section. I secured it using brass from a picture hanging hook. And there we have it. The high-res images from Dishonored 2 reveal details that are almost impossible to reproduce without advanced metal fabrication equipment, but I think this is pretty close. It's about twice the size of my last one, and heavier. This took a few weekends and 2 trips to the hardware store to complete, so not too much of an investment. I gotta say, the MVP of this whole project is my little hacksaw. It cut through both aluminum and steel time after time very well, though I definitely think the blade needs to be replaced. Well, I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did. I'm not quite obsessed enough of a fan to build an outsider shrine to put it on, but I think it looks fine in this shadow box on the wall. Haven't noticed any powers yet, but if I start ranting like the mad survivor, you'll know why.